In this video, I'm going to show you how, by using the Radicore framework, you can create a family of forms to maintain the contents of a database table without writing any code in just a matter of minutes. Radicore is not a general purpose framework. It is not for building public-facing websites. It is for building business web applications, which are commonly known as enterprise applications. We begin by logging onto the framework. I shall skip over message of the day. This top row of buttons are menu buttons. The first four will give me access to the four subsystems which form the framework itself. The fifth one will give me access to a series of sample applications. The first four are the prototype applications which are included in the Radicore download, while the fifth one is one I have created just for this YouTube video. As you can see, it does not contain anything at present. I shall now return to the main menu. With any database application, the most important part is the database itself, and with Radicore, all database information is maintained within its data dictionary. Here I list the databases which currently exist within the data dictionary. I have created at the bottom here an entry for a YouTube database which currently does not contain any tables. So I select that database and then press the navigation button to go into the list table screen. Then from here I press the navigation button to import any new tables, and there it loads a table which is also called YouTube. This does not contain any columns at present, so I select that table. Then on the navigation bar I press the button to go into the list column screen, which shows nothing at present. So then I press the import columns button on the navigation bar, and that will run the task that goes into the database, finds all columns in the database schema which do not currently exist in the data dictionary, and load them. Here you can see it has found 11 columns and one primary key. As this is a brand new table, I must also press the Export to PHP button in the navigation bar, and that will create two files in the file system. One of these is the class file for this table, and the second one is the table structure file for this table. I will explain these later. Having loaded in the table details and created the class file, the next step is to create the tasks or user transactions to maintain the contents of that table. For this, I return to the list tables screen. I select that table, then press the read navigation button. On this screen there is now a new navigation button to generate PHP scripts. This first screen will allow me to select the transaction pattern I want in order to generate the user tasks for this particular table. For this demonstration, I'm going to select the list 1 pattern. After pressing the submit button, the next screen shows me the names of the components that will be generated for this particular pattern. The first one is the name of the task that will be added to the menu database. The second one is the name of the script that will be added into the file system. This will also appear in the URL when this task is activated. And the third script is the screen structure script. I'm not going to change those, so I simply press the submit button. And this will then generate all the necessary components on the file system and in the database. And there it shows me the results. It has created 6 records in the task table, 6 records in the navigation button table, 1 record is added to the menu table. Again, I shall explain these files later. I can immediately check the results by going back to the YouTube menu button, selecting it. You'll see it now contains the task, which will be the list 1 task that I've just created. And there it has navigation buttons for the 6 child tasks that have been added to the database. As you can see, this table is empty at the moment, so in order to add new records to it, I go to the navigation bar and press the New button. This brings up a fresh screen that shows me the columns on this table which are available for input. The red asterisk in front of the column labels will indicate that the field is required, which means if I leave it empty when I press the Submit button, I will get an error message, just like that. I shall now proceed to enter some data. This next field is an integer, so if I give it a non-numeric value, it will reject it. As it's signed, it will allow a negative number. Now the next column is an unsigned integer, so if I give it a negative number, again it will complain. Now this field does not have a red asterisk in front of it, therefore it is an optional field, so I can leave it blank, which I shall do. This is a date field, so I give it a valid date. This is a decimal number. And if I try to give it an invalid value, it will come up with an error. This last column is an integer column which I am going to use as a Boolean, but at present the default control for this is a text box which will allow 0 and 1, but I should change that in a moment. Now I have two submit buttons on the bottom. One is submit, the other is submit stay. If I press submit, it will add that record to the database and return to the parent screen where it will show that record. But if I go in here, I can now start entering new data. Now on this screen, before I submit the data, I also have the option via the copy button to copy that data into memory, and if I press the submit stay button, after adding the data, it will come up with an empty screen again. I can now select the paste button and it will bring in that information, so I can change whatever values I like. Now if I press the submit button, it goes back to that screen where you can see I have 3 records added to the database. Now I shall show you how I can change that Boolean field from a text box to a proper HTML control. In order to do so, I go back to the data dictionary, select the YouTube database, go into tables, select the YouTube table, go into columns, go to the last column there, number 11, which is a Boolean, then I update. Now because the column type is an integer, I have the option of changing this into a Boolean field, which I shall do, and I shall, without changing anything else, I shall submit that change. Now I must also remember that because I've changed a value in the data dictionary for this table, I must re-export to PHP so it will reconstruct that table structure file. Now at any time I can recreate the table structure file, especially after making any changes, but if it finds that the class file already exists, it will not update it because this may have been amended to include some hook methods which will be used for custom processing later on. But now I shall return back to the YouTube table. Now if I go into the new option, you'll see that the Boolean field is now set to radio buttons for yes and no. I also have the option of changing this to a checkbox which is either on or off, or I could have a drop-down list with the values yes and no in, but I shall leave it at that for the present. I shall now show you some of the other buttons which are available on this screen. First off, I will use the search button. Now this will show a screen which is initially like the add screen, but none of the fields are required. You can use this screen to enter selection criteria, which will then act as filters in the list screen. So for example, I can select anything with that Boolean field set to no, submit, and it comes back with all entries with no there. And notice, as I've already used the search screen on this table, I also have the option of going back to the previous search. So if I go in now and press select, nothing qualifies there. But if I type in that, it shows me one entry with that value. I can reset, that will clear the search criteria, or I can press previous search and it will show it again. Now the other button on this screen is an audit trail. Now on this screen you can select an occurrence or any number of occurrences, go into audit trail, and it will show what is in the audit database for the record with this primary key. Now, as I've just added these three, they will all show the same information. There is nothing in the old value but something in the new, which means it didn't exist before but it does now, so that indicates an add screen. Now if I go into one of these records and change it, if I go into the audit trail now, you can see the first record is the addition, and the second record I've changed this column from this value to this value. Now if I actually delete a record, it's no longer there for me to press the audit button, but what I can do is go back to the home page, press the audit menu button, and this takes me straight into the search audit screen. Now I've set up a value before. Now what this will do is look for all changes that happened on the YouTube table since that particular date, which will be today's date as the default. And here you can see it has 5 entries. So I have that is an addition, that's an addition, that's an addition, that is an update. Now here you see there is an old value but nothing new, so this indicates where the record has been deleted.